What it do? It's a Three Dudes Fantasy Football Show. We are back after dissecting the rookies, going deep dive on Dynasty. It's time to take a look at some of the second-year breakout players because there is still this thing called development in the NFL. I know it stands for not for long, and we like to throw players away. They're not good in 8 games. He's no good. Your quarterback struggles for 6 games. He's a franchise bust. But sometimes guys get better because you know what they do? Practice. We're talking about practice. And there's some really intriguing second-year players. But first off, gentlemen, what it do? How's it going?
What's going on, man?
Good, man.
It's good to be back.
It is good to be back indeed. And we're going to start with second-year running backs. And as Steve pointed out in our pre-show meeting, yes, we're very professional in our pre-show meeting, a lot of the second-year players we're talking about, they're not the obvious guys. We're not talking about Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Addison, Flowers, the wide receiver position, because those guys are givens. We know a lot of them are going in the first 3 rounds of fantasy football drafts. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper and look at some of the names that could break out on your roster, especially when we start with the running backs. Are they worthy handcuffs? Because right now, really, when you look at second-year running backs, it's handcuff city. There's outside of Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, a lot of these guys are behind an established starter. And when we break this down, I'm not talking about these guys as the first guy I talked about is my number 1 second-year running back. I actually laid it out in terms of the draft capital that was invested in these guys. So the first guy we're going to talk about is Zach Charbonnet from Seattle because he was drafted second round, 52. So of the guys we're talking about, he was the highest draft pick last year. So we got to talk about who's in front of him. That's Kenneth Walker. So Kenneth Walker right now sitting in the 5th round ADP. You look at Charbonnet going 135. So you're talking about a handcuff in about 13th or 14th round. He had 108 carries, 462 yards, and a touchdown, 33 receptions last year. And Kenneth Walker is a pretty productive running back. I'll start with you, Steve, on the Seahawks backfield, kind of the first guy we're going to dive into. And it's one of the questions I'm going to ask you guys, too. Is this player you want to draft and hold or wait and throw fab money at them in case an injury happens? Because do you think that Charbonnet is talented enough, the guy, to draft late and just stash?
Well, Charbonnet coming out of the draft, if he didn't land in Seattle, would have been a high drafted fantasy player last season. So the talent is there. I still think it's there because he's behind Kenneth Walker, who I love. I still want a part of that backfield. If I get Kenneth Walker, I'm going to draft Charbonnet even higher, right? I'm probably going to take him in the 11th round to make sure I get that handcuff because even though, Pete Carroll's gone, I still think they're going to run the ball. I don't think they're going to get away from that. So I want Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet because they're far enough apart I don't have to worry about it too much. But if I don't get Kenneth Walker and he's still sitting there in the 12th or 13th round, I'm willing to draft Charbonnet because Kenneth Walker has proven he's going to miss a game or two. He's not, I wouldn't call him injury prone, but he does get, banged up every now and then, misses a game or two. Charbonnet is one of those guys that if Kenneth Walker gets hurt, especially late in the season, could be a league winner because he has the talent. I love Charbonnet this season. He's a player I'm holding. No matter if I get him, I'm holding him.
A draft and stash there. And it is interesting you brought it up. The Pete Carroll era is done in Seattle. So we are going to see some change in that offense. Head coach Mike McDonald comes over. He's a defensive guy from Baltimore, but he's been talking about that offense a lot this offseason. We're going to talk about a wide receiver from that team I think has a big second-year opportunity. And another established guy is Alvin Kamara, the Saints running back. He's going in the same spot. The average ADP for Kenneth Walker and Alvin Kamara is both 56. So they're guys right there, smack dab in the 5th round, really, right now of 10-team leagues that are being drafted. And by the way, we are using the Fantasy Pros ADP PPR to have this discussed. And Chev, Kendre Miller, second-year running back out of TCU. Not a lot of opportunities last year, but did have 41 carries, 1 touchdown. And Aaron, you look at that Saints backfield, I still think you got to believe that it's all Alvin Kamara. And Miller, to me, feels like a guy you chase as opposed to drafting if there's an injury. How do you see that backfield?
Yeah, I don't think I'd be drafting Miller, to be honest. I think Kamara's got on lock, and I believe Jamal Williams still on the team, right? So he's still there. was like, I know they paid some money for him, so it is going to be interesting. But to me, I wouldn't, but that's up to discussion.
Yeah, and he's going similar to Charbonnet right now in that 13th, 14th range. That is a guy kind of not totally confident in. I'll take my chances if Kamara gets hurt. And Kamara's had a pretty strong track record. I know he got a late start last year due to the suspension, but once he got on the field, he was solid. The one thing I will say with Kamara is yards per carry was under 4 yards last year. So that he's still going to be a PPR monster in those games. I think that is a backfield with the Saints that you're probably going to chase a player as opposed to having him on your roster. Like, I don't think you have as much faith in Miller as we do the Seattle backup. Now, this is where it gets interesting, guys, because this is the 1 second-year guy that I'm looking at, and he could actually win the starting job. That's why it's handcuff city for these second-year running backs. So go to Tennessee, and Tennessee is a fascinating offense. Will Levis, they are packing things around him. They signed Calvin Ridley. You have Nuke Hopkins. They brought in Tyler Boyd, who knows the offense because he was with Brian Callahan, the new head coach in Cincinnati. Even moving on from Derrick Henry, they have Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. So Tajay Spears, last year behind Derrick Henry, 453 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did have 52 catches. He played that passing game role well in that offense. So right now, Tony Pollard is going about 10 picks in front of him. So people are still kind of buying into the Tony Pollard name. ADP there is about 92. Spears sent 109, which to me is money right there. If he holds kind of that 10, 11th round, I'm all over Spears as an RB2. And you look at Tennessee, Titans coach Brian Callahan, who is going to call plays. He did say as they wrapped up this offseason program that the most exciting thing for him is that you can put both these running backs in different places, in different formations, get them the ball in the screen game and the passing game. And one of the things they also said is they don't tip their hand. So if Spears or Pollard are on the field, it's not like, oh, here's the running back. Oh, here's the passing back. So how do you guys feel about playing the Pollard-Spears roulette? Because Spears is a 1 second-year guy right now going down this list that you could actually get more bang for your buck right there. But it's pretty much a pick 'em between Pollard and Spears right now.
You kind of touched on it already, right? Spears is going 10 picks later. I like this backfield a lot, so I'm willing to go with whoever I can get later. Like, I would love to get a piece of this backfield, but I'll just take whoever I can get a little bit later. I think that could change as we go down the season, because as training camp comes, I think you could hear a lot about Tajay Spears. And then it might be Tony Pollard, but I'm willing to go with either of them, just whoever I can get later, because I don't think you're going to see that big of a difference. I think they're both going to have really good seasons for where you're drafting them. You're drafting them near 100.
Yeah, I'm there with you, Steve. I like both backs. Kind of reminds me of Pollard and Zeke, the two of them together. It's going to be kind of a similar situation of who ends up being the better value, but they're going to be pretty close. But we'll see as time goes on and get a little bit closer this season how it kind of shakes down.
I think Titans are going to be sneaky, like a sneaky fantasy winner team this year, because they're going to let Will Levis air it out. They went on, they brought in an offensive coach and Brian Callahan. They poured a ton of money into that offense in the offseason. They drafted a first-round tackle. So I think when you look at the value of the Titans overall, I think you're going to get some pretty good value out of that entire backfield. The next one I have a question is Tank Bigsby. So Jacksonville with Travis Etienne, who had a fantastic season last year. Like, Etienne was money. He ended up like RB3 on the season. It was a touchdown machine, 11 touchdowns. But when you look at Bigsby, it is the ultimate handcuff, because Jaguars head coach Doug Peterson has talked about trying to take some of the carries away from Travis Etienne, and they have talked up the growth of Bigsby. But yeah, Etienne was RB3, 267 carries, just over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, also had 58 receptions, 476 yards, and a touchdown. This is in your wheelhouse, Aaron. When you look at Tank Bigsby, is this a guy that you have to have if you have Travis Etienne, because of the way they're going to lean into Etienne and what could happen if he got hurt?
This one's tough because they talk about Tank Bigsby. They want to make Tank Bigsby a thing, but it has not ever translated to him being a thing. And until I see it, I don't know. I literally don't know. Because D'Ernest Johnson's still there in our backfield, and he's a good running back too. But this one's a tough one. I don't know if I would draft Tank Bigsby. It's tough. I don't know how you guys feel. I don't know if I would handcuff him.
Because Bigby's a dude he's flirting with undrafted territory in like 10
yeah.
team leagues.
Yep.
So he though, with the way they lean into Travis Etienne, he goes on if I'm an Etienne owner, I have to have this guy on my roster.
It's not sustainable, but I'm curious to see how Etienne begins the season, because I have a feeling it may be a little bit underperforming.
Because you're going to pay more of a premium for Travis Etienne this year.
Absolutely.
And so with where you're going to be selecting Travis Etienne, I think second, third round in some drafts where he's going to go. I think if it is, round 12, 13 in your draft and Tank Bigsby is there.
Worried, then grab him. But
are you going Bigsby or Johnson though? Because you just kind of talked up Johnson.
That's the tough thing. They, like I said, they want to make Bigsby a thing, but it ends up being D'Ernest Johnson.
If you believe in Jacksonville's running game, you can draft both. Tank Bigsby is near the 17th round, and D'Ernest Johnson isn't drafted in most formats. So if you really believe in that running game, you can just take them all. Like when you're talking the 15th, 16th round, 17th round, what's it matter? You're throwing darts anyways. If you're just protecting your handcuff, do it. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
If you're spending that much for ETN, I think that's probably the wisest. But to me, it is going to be tough. It's going to be a coin flip between who's the back on the field when he's not there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too when I remember having this conversation about, are these guys worthy to be on a roster? Because we're talking a lot about guys that are drafted in the teens right now with these second-year running backs. I think some of that goes to the value you invest in that first running back. Or you could even maybe steal one of these handcuffs late in the draft. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. If you know a team is going to be run heavy and you look at some of those players at the top, that is a great thing to target, is take advantage of maybe that owner. All right, they got complacent. They drafted Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne, and they felt solid, and they might have overlooked that. And so there's an area you can take advantage too, where it's not necessarily a direct handcuff because you have that guy, but you could get into that stash mode, because if they're going to lean into one running back, if that guy gets hurt, I don't think immediately you're going to see a committee. And so that is definitely something to watch.
It's Alexander Madison and Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
Right.
But you just hope the guy can perform. But all it takes though is 1 or 2 weeks. Pop off for 1 or 2 weeks. And wins you a game.
We haven't seen that. Not yet. Not yet with Bigsby.
Yeah.
Yeah. If let's say Bigsby does pop off and you're not the Travis Etienne owner, you can always trade him.
Yeah.
If you don't believe it'll be a continuous thing, like you can trade him to the Etienne owner and get a bag.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to attack this. Is thinking about, do you want to handcuff the running back yourself? Do you want to take advantage of maybe that owner in the draft overlooking that guy? Because like I said, I don't see a clear path for a lot of these guys to big playing time outside of Tajay Spears in Tennessee. So that's the way you're going to have to look at it. These second-year guys are going to be taken late in drafts. And there's a couple I just want to hit quickly before we jump to know what everyone wants to talk about, and that's the wide receivers. I know last year, Steve, I believe you were early on the Roschon Johnson, the Chicago Bears. Well, now the hype is there. It's Caleb Williams. It's Rome Odunze. It's Keenan Allen. It's DJ Moore. It's Cole Kmet. I know, by the way, they added DeAndre Swift. Is this one of those guys you're kind of talking about? Like, the talent is there, and in the teens, you want him on your roster.
So I'm still a big Roschon Johnson fan. when you watch Roschon Johnson, the craziest thing to me is he's a great pass blocker. So he's a third down running back. And how many times is it the third down with a rookie quarterback? You need that guy to block. And then when he does chip and release, he gets a quick pass and takes it up. So yeah, I was a little early last year. I thought Roschon Johnson. I drafted him on Dynasty. I got him in as many places as possible. I don't know how well DeAndre Swift's going to do, but he is the guy. But I still think Roschon is the handcuff. And honestly, I kind of like him more than DeAndre Swift. I'm not going to take him before him, but I'm more than willing to take take Roschon and just hold him. I'm going to see. I just want to see what happens with him because I think he's a great back and he could do a lot.
Yeah, so right now DeAndre Swift going about right at the turn. 72. So again, really the way I talk is usually 10-team leagues because that's kind of the standard for a lot of people and their drafts. And Roschon Johnson is like 18th round, so not even drafted in a lot of these places. But that's an exciting offense. That's one of those teams that the hype is crazy for Caleb Williams. But if they go, do you see? Because I'm thinking like what Detroit was able to do last year, right? They found two guys because I like Swift. I think in the 7th round he is a great zero running back target.
Yeah.
But getting
right,
Johnson. So a couple of these guys, just I think Charbonnet and Johnson are the talent that you want on your roster, and kind of hold, wait, and see. You don't want to be chasing those guys, but some of the other ones, say a Miller, a Bigsby, if you're listening, Taryn, these are some of the other guys you can, have a fat battle if something were to happen. But late in drafts, you do want to still be strategic with it at times. Try to find the guy everyone's overlooking.
Yeah, well, and I guess the thing is that I have to remember I'm coming from a point of, and we've talked about it all offseason, right? Zero running back or hero running back. I'm either going to be drafting a ton of pass catchers, or I'm going to be taking one really good running back and loading up on pass catchers in the 2nd through whatever rounds. These are the players that you start to look for when you get to the teens, right? You have to find those players that could make an impact because you didn't take any other running backs, right? Last year it was Devon Achane. You got him in the 12th, 13th round. Raheem Mostert, same thing. Those are the players you're looking for. And so you kind of want to know these names if that's your draft strategy. It's not about if you think this guy is going to, or this guy is great. That's not what you're drafting for in the 13th round. This is a guy who could be great, and we've seen the talent, and he has the potential to be there. Especially if you're not if you draft like CMC and Derrick Henry, fine. Then you probably don't need to know all of these guys. Take a few of them, but you can move on with your life. But that's not what we're talking about. That's not how we've talked about all season. You're going hero or zero RB, grab one of these guys. Like, grab a few of these guys, right? Like, that's what you want on your team. That guy who just blows up and you look like a genius for having him on your team.
And one thing I want to throw out there before I move on to wide receivers, in that similar vein, Jaleel McLaughlin in Denver. He got hyped up a little bit in OTAs. They said his pass blocking really improved, and there hasn't been a lot of positive buzz about Javonte Williams this offseason in Denver. They drafted a 5th-round running back, Audric Estime, out of Notre Dame. We know Sean Payton, even when things were rolling, you saw 2 running backs be productive. Someone could fall into that Mark Ingram role in the Broncos offense. And McLaughlin could be that guy. He's a smaller guy, but he was an undrafted free agent last year. He's going at the very end of drafts. His ADP is 162. But we're talking about a guy that averaged 5.6 yards per carry, unlimited touches, but had 76 carries, 410 yards, 31 catches out of the backfield with 2 receiving touchdowns. He is in that vein of what Steve was just talking about, having a guy that could sneak up on everyone and steal some touches and become a productive member in a backfield. And McLaughlin added to the list. I think we're looking at the Seahawks backfield, Chicago, the other piece of that offense because it could be really explosive. And then there's opportunity in Denver because I do not think this is going to be Javonte Williams or bust for Sean Payton and the Broncos this season. All right, let's go for it.
One more. Just Chase Brown. We just need
Okay, yeah,
Zach Moss is the starting running back. Chase Brown's the backup.
but he's not an established guy, so this is good
You're
point.
right,
Let's see
yeah,
what you got.
and he's year 2, right? Chase Brown could be, I don't know. He might be one of those guys that week 7 or 8 takes the job. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but he's just a guy to keep on your radar more than anything else. Just keep
It's what we're talking about. We're talking about late round running backs, the potential to steal a guy before you have to bid for him after week 1 or week 2. And Chase Brown had some explosive plays. We know that offense takes a lot of pressure off of the guys because Joe Burrow is coming back. T. Higgins signed his franchise tender to this point. And I do like Zach Moss at 85, but Chase Brown has the explosiveness and people are buying into him because he's right now 11th, 12th round. So to your point, people are not sold on Zach Moss.
Right. And I think that's a good thing. I think Chase Brown might move up too far and you might be out on him. We know Zach Moss is good. I think if you can get Chase Brown in that 12th, 13th round, I think it's a great play. I think you're just going to have to let him sit on your bench for 6 to 7 weeks before Zach Moss.
And this is a tough thing to do, right? Is when we're having this conversation about handcuffs, it's sitting on these guys because I'm one of those fantasy football players. I get antsy. I get super antsy. I make changes after the draft. Patience. I make changes after week 1, and I miss because I don't wait 3 or 4 weeks for someone to pop off, and I always hurt myself. And so that is a challenge of having flexibility, attacking the right guys, bidding everything on Puka Nacua and it working out, or HN and winning a couple weeks, which could change your entire season versus willing to wait. And I think that's why when you put your team together, what do you think, Steve? When we talk about these guys, so you're thinking about normal roster size, right? You have quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end and a flex in your bench. Maybe one or 2? Because you want to give yourself a little flexibility of not having guys that you want to wait on for so long?
Yeah, so I always take I take 3 floor guys, and by just 3 guys that I'm like, oh, these guys will be consistent, but I have no problem dropping, right? So that if a Puka comes out or a Devon Achane, I'm like, yeah, that's the guy I'm dropping. Because I like to sit on, I do. So I'm the opposite. I sit on players for too long, and that's what killed me last season. But it's worked out for me in the past, where I'll sit on a guy for 3 or 4 weeks, and then he finally pops off, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm good. So there's this fine line, but that's why I draft a lot of floor players in that 10 to 12 round. I'll take 3 of them just to make sure that those are going to be the guys that I drop off my team. Because mathematically, the teams that usually win titles have 6 to 7 players from their original draft on their roster. And the rest of their team is usually players they picked up off of waivers or trades. But 6 to 7 is the important thing. So that's why, like, those first 9 rounds, that's where you're going to get most of those players. You might get a solid steal in those 13th round, but that's where you take those chances. And if they don't work out after 3 or 4 weeks, you kind of know. Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, I've missed too. I dropped Alvin Kamara his rookie year after like 3 weeks because he wasn't doing anything. And then I look like an idiot because, that's why I started sitting on players longer because I can't be that guy anymore.
It's tough, man. It's tough. And that's why we love this. And that's why we just try to give you all the names you can. Guys to have on your mind, guys to have ready on draft day. But also a good thing to do is once your draft is done, is build your early watch list. And I think that's key, just so you know the names that you're looking for so you can be ready to pounce. Because I know week 1, everyone's going to have their waiver wire columns, and you can jump on that. But it's also good to get an idea of what's out there because maybe even after the draft is over, you can make that quick change to be like, oh, actually, like this handcuff or this rookie better. So there's a lot of ways to attack it. That's why there's so many of us talking about fantasy football. All right. You ready? This is what the people came to the show for. Wide receivers. No one cares about running backs. It's PPR, points per reception. We want wide receivers. We want big plays. And we're going to start with who I do think is going to be the breakout star this year, and that is Jackson Smith-Njigba in Seattle. They took him 20th overall in the first round. And as a rookie, essentially functioning as a true wide receiver 3 in the Seahawks offense. He put up 63 catches, 628 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's pushed him into the 7th round in this season, and I absolutely love that. I think there's going to be a little push to that, and I think Smith and Jigma is going to be probably closer to that 5-6 turn. But this is a guy that if the strategy we're going to talk a lot about is probably 0 running back. We'll do some running back stuff later, but we're all about wide receivers, man, right now in the fantasy football show. What I like about Njigba is how excited they are about him in Seattle. And we know it's the Pete Carroll era is over, but Mike McDaniel said that Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be a massive piece of the team's offense this season, saying, quote, JSN's a great player, and we're expecting big things out of him. He's had a great offseason, works his tail off, and his practice habits, moving ability, it's pretty elite. And I get it's offseason hype, but I think that you have a brand new coach that sees that Smith-Njigba is better than Tyler Lockett. Smith-Njigba is going to be the number 2 option in this offense. And if you are drafting him in the 6th or 7th round, that means you probably have 2 wide receivers you like. Maybe have grabbed a tight end or running back. And if I'm sliding Smith-Njigba in as my wide receiver 3 in my lineup, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, he's the guy I am all in on. How do you guys feel about him?
I'll let you go, Aaron.
I like him, and I think Tyler Lockett's gonna, he is gonna have to move aside for Njigba. I personally, probably out of this list that we're looking at, I do like Njigba probably the most. And the coaching change, all of this coming, I was like, it's definitely going to be a good thing. So I would like to get him on my team.
Yeah, I mean, JSN is he's a proven talent. We loved him last season. If he didn't go to Seattle, we would have loved him even more. It's the same thing with Zach Charbonnet. They were just taking talent last season. They didn't care if they already had it. So JSN's one of those guys that we could see a big, like, he had a good rookie season for 63 catches, 66, what did you say, 628 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's not a bad rookie season, right?
No, and playing still, he was pretty much still playing behind Tyler Lockett.
Yep.
Yeah, so you kind of look at it like that's 120, 140-ish points. I don't see why that's his floor, right? That was with Tyler Lockett there. So, and Tyler Lockett being the main number 2. I see no reason that we shouldn't see an easy, 190 to 200 points. And for a 7th round wide receiver, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm big on Smith-Njigba and that value. I think it's going to rise a little bit, but still, I think 5th round, I'm comfortable taking Smith-Njigba. And again, we have these conversations about how you approach drafting. There's different strategies to it, but I think he's a wide receiver 3 with a super high ceiling and could stabilize as a true wide receiver 2 in the season. I want to talk about the Chargers pass game right now because it's a lot of uncertainty. So we went over the rookies in our last video, which of course you can check out, like, and subscribe. Three Dudes Fantasy Football Show, and we did a deep dive in Dynasty. And Ladd McConkey, the route technician out of Georgia, he's going right now 70th overall. So even ahead of Jackson Smith-Njigba in some early drafts. So people are targeting him as a Chargers wide receiver 1. I think that's a little too expensive for my taste right now. But you say you versus their 1st round pick last year, and that is Quentin Johnson, who people have already labeled a bust and are done with. And you look at Quentin Johnson, he wasn't drafted by this GM or this head coach. And he's going in the 14th round. Is Quentin Johnson a dart throw you want to make this year? Or is the Chargers maybe a team that, all right, maybe you'll go with Ladd, but you just don't see a lot there right now offensively?
I don't love the team from a talent perspective. Just, I don't even really want Ladd McConkey. Like, I'll take him if he's there for the right value, but I don't.
Yeah, because are you playing him as a wide receiver 3? Is he flexing him?
I might wide receiver Yeah, I'll flex him.
Yeah.
That's like best case scenario. I'll flex him. And Quentin Johnson, everybody's level on the bust. I'm one of those. I'm one of everybody. Looking at his routes last year, he literally reminded me of Devontae Parker. So, which is, I'm going to run down the sideline and throw up the ball, and that's
not myself.
That's just not a guy I really want to take a shot on. So I'm okay with not getting. If Quentin Johnson goes and I look like an idiot, I'm okay with that. I feel like I'd rather be that guy than the other one who's like, no, I don't want to be. This is Quentin Johnson's year, like we've done with Kyle Pitts, or you know what I mean. Like I just don't want to be. I want.
It's not going to hurt as much, if you take him in the 15th round.
No,
but I don't want him. I just think it'll be that'll be the player I drop first, and then if he goes off, I'm going to hate myself more. So I'd rather just not.
I can see that. Like he's the one like, I want to make this move right now, and I'm getting rid of Quentin Johnson.
And then he goes off, and then I'll be like, I shouldn't have dropped it. I just would rather not even worry about it.
I mean, look at the Chargers. I think you have better, with like a Josh Palmer or something in that offense, just more consistent player that Justin Herbert's probably going to trust, because if Johnson doesn't show he can be more than just a 50-50 guy, and there's roles for those guys in the offense, and that was Mike Williams, but Mike Williams, when healthy, produced in that role.
Yep, that is true.
So, there's not a lot there for the Chargers. One thing I want to get into, some names that seem obvious, but one I want to talk about real quick before we get into some of the murkier situations is I was a little shocked when I was putting these notes together for ADP that Tank Dell is going 35. Am I missing something? Like, are we investing the third or fourth round pick in Tank Dell right now? Of course, still he's a second-year player, and he was fantastic. He had 4 touchdowns of 20-plus yards. But it's also an offense that now has Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs and Dalton Schultz and Joe Mixon. It feels like the price is too high for me on Tank Dell, but I know sometimes we got to take a step back and invest in the talent. And you've been on Tank Dell since last season, Steve. We know the talent's there, but is that going to be worth it for your fantasy team this year?
It's too rich, in my opinion. We've talked about it multiple times, right? You can't sustain more than 2 targets. Even if we believe CJ Stroud can be the exception and not the rule, and he can sustain 3 targets, 35, I'm drafting you. That means 3rd round. Maybe we say 4th round. Maybe falls a little bit. It means I'm drafting you as my wide receiver 2, with some teams drafting you as their wide receiver 1. I don't think Tank Dell has that ceiling. If Stephon Diggs wasn't there, I'd say yes. Because
and CJ I think it's Nico Collins and Tank, like what we saw last year. Those are guys I want, but now with Stephon Diggs in the mix, like I can't pay 3rd or 4th round price for a guy that I'll start him at flex.
Well,
but if I got him in like the 8th round.
Right. And that's the point, right? Is it going to be Stephon Diggs and Nico? Is it going to be Stephon Diggs and Tank? Is it going to be Tank and Nico and Stephon Diggs is the odd man out? That's where you kind of go like, okay, I think Nico's okay, and we believe Stephon Diggs still has the talent, so Tank Dell's the odd man out in that scenario. But I don't really want to pay a premium for players that I'm not sure who's going to be the guy.
Yeah, it's definitely a little too rich for me. I don't know if that ADP, man, I can't.
That one caught me off guard a little bit when I was going with these 2nd-year guys and seeing where he's at in this mix. A couple quick hitters. I don't want to do too big of a dive because I got a big topic I want to throw at you guys when it comes to some of these 2nd-year wide receivers. So Rashee Rice right now going 7th round. The dude's going to be suspended for some games. So 8th or 9th round, I might be willing to sit on Rashee Rice for 4 or 6 games because I think in the regular season he can still be a solid target. But how do you guys feel about Rice knowing that they did bring in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy was a 1st round pick and Travis Kelce is still there? Is this worst case scenario for Rashee Rice to miss time early in the season? And then what would be something that would intrigue you to have him on your team?
Oof.
I
don't
like
know.
Marquise Brown, who's going later more.
He's the odd man out. To me, I don't want to touch Racey Rice, but that's just my feeling. I mean, where he's probably gonna go at, it's still tough for me to want to draft him
Well,
just
and
because
we
Worthy's
don't know
there.
how long he's suspended.
I know, and that's the big thing. It's like you got an idea what might be, but you really don't know what the suspension's going to be because it will be something, and who knows how long. I'm curious.
I mean, it's probably 4 to 6 games for sure. It's
6
kind of what we've
games.
seen, and that's a lot. Even to sit on someone if you're, it's 8th or 9th round, and I think that I would invest in Rice if he wasn't suspended because I think he could hold off even Worthy for a while because we saw Mahomes lean into him late in the season. He made plays, and I think he could have been a good pass catcher in that offense. But when you're putting your teams together, if he drops into the 10th round or later, I think I could sit on him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of hard in the 7th because Steve, you're just talking like those. What do you think? 7? What do you like 7, 8 rounds maybe? I'd probably say 7th. You're hoping that you hit on at least 5 of these guys are legit starters for your team.
Well, 7th round, you're still drafting starters.
Yeah, you're because you're gonna miss on someone. So, but that's still the area where you're drafting someone that you're going to rely on. Mm-hmm. And Rice right now makes 0 sense.
No. Well, and Rice, right? You draft a suspended player that is going to come in and be amazing, right? We did it with Zeke. We've done it with other injured players.
Even got last year, the Kamara and Taylor stuff. Did those teams really get the payoff?
No, but you drafted
not with
Kamara
Jonathan Taylor.
But we didn't. But we drafted Jonathan Taylor thinking he was going to play week 1. Kamara is a good example because he was out for it was 6 weeks, right? So Kamara came back, but he produced when you're drafting him in the 8th round as your running back 3, and then he moves into a running back 2 role. You're like, hey, I'm great with that.
And he came back, he was RB11, so he's
a legit stud. So it's a little different than Rice.
Can you do that same thing? Exactly, it's different. Alvin Kamara, you know who he is. Rashee Rice, we know.
You got glimpses, but it definitely, I don't know, it definitely hurts. I was like that.
Well, and then when you're suspended, you're away from the team.
Yep, and that's why I think he's going to be the odd man out for a little bit until he gets going back. It's they're going to be. It seems like it's the next man up in that offense. Kelsey's there, but also Kelsey's there.
I mean, depends. Last season, or 2 seasons ago, after the Super Bowl with Kadarius Toney, you thought he was going to be the second coming, Jay. And then this season,
I bet on Kadarius Toney.
Right, and so you're right, Aaron. Kansas City has proven they don't care.
No,
just if you perform, that's who.
I think Rice is dynasty hold, redraft. Let someone else touch him.
Down.
Yeah. If he's there in the teens, maybe take a chance. But I think he's an undrafted player. And that suspension comes out if it's 4 to 6 games, because people are going to then start getting hyped up on Hollywood Brown, on Worthy.
Yep.
Kelsey's still a name. So I don't think we have to worry about having to draft Rashee Rice this season. All right, guys, this is the big debate when it comes to wide receivers. And the Green Bay Packers have a fascinating young core of wide receivers. However, who do you draft? Who do you invest in? Because we're talking about Dontavian Wicks, who was a 5th-round pick and had 39 catches, 581 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was wide receiver 56 last year. He's going in the 11th round. You have Jaden Reed, the 2nd-round pick for the Packers last year. He finished wide receiver 25 on the season, 64 catches, 793 yards, 8 touchdowns. And he's going in the 5th round. Then you have Romeo Doubs, who was wide receiver 36. And he's going 105. And by the way, Christian Mr. Hamstring Watson is still in the mix. And when you look at the way the Packers are building this offense, they have straight out come out and said, we don't need a number one wide receiver. The Romeo Doubs, 96 targets. Jaden Reed had 64. No, so, excuse me. Let me reset this real quick. So Romeo Doubs had 96 targets, but Reed had the most catches at 64. And this is an offense that, via True Media, Doubs' target share was 17%, which ranked 40th. Reed's was 24%, which ranked 23rd. And so you don't have guys that are getting a large share of this pie. And then you have Wicks that is there. And then you have a Watson that is coming in. And then you have Luke Musgrave, who, by the way, is a second-year player at tight end. Jordan Love, I think go all in on him. But when it comes to the Packers receivers, I can't pay a fifth-round price for Jaden Reed right now. Like, this entire group is 8th round or later for me. Like, I want one of these guys, but who are you betting on? Is it Reed? Is it Watson? Is it Doubs? Like, I'm taking Doubs in the 10th round all day if he's still there. But I think this is going to be interesting to watch because the Packers are saying, like, they're not changing who they are. Like, they want Jordan Love to spread that football out. He showed last year he's not going to zero in on one specific target. And we think the offense is going to be good because it showed you. It was really good. And I have some stats from Warren Sharp real quick that I want to share with the Green Bay Packers when it comes to wide receiver completions over 10 yards downfield. Miami, of course, was number one. So you had Miami, Minnesota, Houston, Dallas, Detroit, and Green Bay. So they were pushing the football down the field. When it comes to goal-to-goal situations, which maybe this is a Josh Jacobs stat, so keep that in mind, they scored on 95% of their possessions inside the 10-yard line. And we know from week 11 on that Jordan Love was the number one highest-rated quarterback in the NFL. So with all that being said, guys, I think I just convinced myself to invest in Josh Jacobs and Jordan Love. But how do we, with a young, fun group of skilled players, find good value for the Green Bay Packers? Figure it out.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I
like
honestly,
no, go ahead.
I probably gonna say the same thing as you. I don't know. Like this is the one where I'm like, I love Jaden Reed's talent, but I don't love him in the 5th round. I like Christian Watson's talent, but I don't like how he's injury prone all the time. I want to think Romeo Dubes is good, but I don't know. I love Jordan Love and I love Josh Jacobs because we know they want to run the ball, and I know Jordan Love's going to get the ball out, but I don't know who the guy is. So I think I'm going to kind of fall back to what I said earlier. I'm just going to take a piece of this offense, whoever I can get later.
Yeah, roll the dice a little late. It's not a bad strategy.
Yeah, if Dobbs is there in the 10th round, I'm all over that. And I think if you didn't do
100%.
Like, I would start attacking the Packers as my wide receiver 3, our flex plan in offense. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm locked in my wide receiver 1 or 2, then 7th, 8th round, because I'm probably going to want to get my tight end and at least one running back at that point in time. So if the ability, maybe the 6th round I'd flirt with it if I really love my wide receivers, but it's more so if I'm playing a Packers wide receiver, I want them as my wide receiver 3 or flex. I don't think I could be investing in them as a 1 or 2 to try to carry my team, because I do think we're going to see a lot of offense that is spread out. And of course, one of these guys is going to go off. But I think that this is truly a situation that right now, if we play Steve's game, it is hard to pin down which 2 are going to be the top target getters in this offense.
Yeah, somebody's going to get lucky. I just don't know. Like, if you take enough Packers wide receivers, it could be Jaden Reed. It might be him, right? It could be Dobbs. It could be Watson. There's going to be 2, but I can't figure out who they are because last season it was Christian Watson until he got hurt. And then Jaden Reed came on strong, right? So that's probably who it is. Like you said, he didn't even hit the most targets. He just had the most catches.
Yeah, so we know that that's one of those guys. The talent's there.
Right.
But it's 5th round. Like if you're going Reed in the 5th round, had to go wide receiver for a second. And then that's like I think it's hard to
you'd
look
have
at.
to love him. Yep.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm happy if he's my wide receiver 3, but that's probably not going to pan out for me in the 5th round at that point because I'm probably going to be looking for my tight end. I'm probably going to try to get a top 5 tight end at that point, maybe do my RB1. And then I like, Dobbs, or I think even Watson's, price probably going to push down a little bit and take a chance on one of those guys. But that's the beauty of fantasy football. And ultimately, too, guys, when it comes down to it, draft who you want on your team.
Yeah. 100%. You're right. Yeah. If you love
Like,
Jaden Reed, take Jaden Reed.
It's okay. Like, there's all the fantasy shows you're going to listen to, and hopefully listen to ours. We appreciate it. But all the stuff you're going to read, like, just consume the information and then build your board. Like, grab the players that you want. And that's something that I'm really going to lean into this season. And, I think rankings are fun, but I think they're also paralyzing when you get into a draft. And I know it's life, man. We all got things to do. You're not going to study for the fantasy football draft like it is the SATs, even though I do. That's why we're doing this. But
we make a show. So
yeah, but I think a lot of people can get handcuffed by rankings. So just you watch football. You watch Red Zone every weekend. You have an idea of what's going on. So kind of build your own board. And if a guy is there, like, we're going to talk about things about value and building teams in ADP, but also take the guys you want on your team because it's fantasy football. You don't get fired for this.
Use rankings as like a soft guideline. Yeah. Like, hey, this guy, I don't know, whoever you love, is going normally in the 5th round. So I'm not going to take him in the 1st. But maybe you take him a little early if you really want to get him in the 4th. That's what you should use the rankings for. More of a, this is notoriously where he's going, but I really want him, so I'm going to draft him around earlier. That's what you should use everybody else's rankings for. And when we give you our rankings, it'll be the same thing. This is who we love. But...
yeah, it's all fun in games, but boy, does it get intense. So we look at, we had 2nd year breakdown, and of course, again, there's the obvious guys we didn't talk about, Robinson, Gibbs, Flowers, Addison, the guys that we know are going to be going high in drafts. But these are some of the players that I think do have really interesting upside. The running backs is going to be tough because I think you're going to have to just take a chance on some of these guys, draft and stash, because it is handcuff city with a lot of the 2nd year running backs in terms of the starters who are in front of them. I do think there's a lot of potential in the 2nd year wide receivers in this group. I do like them. Like, I do want some Packers on my team. I would take Tank Dell, but not in the 3rd round. I think Smith and Jigba, if he sits there in the 6th or 7th round value, easy money all day in drafts. And is there anyone else, guys? We didn't do it line by line. Were there any other names, players that you're looking at, whether it's on the list we put together or someone else that I might have missed that you want to watch, you want to be ready for on draft day?
From the 2nd round, from our sophomores, I really am interested in Chase Brown. I like his value, and I like Zach Charbonnet, which, we kind of touched on those 2 players as big players for me. I also, it's going to sound silly, but I like Demario Douglas. I don't know if he'll be great, but he's a player that I'm interested in. Maybe not drafting, but he's a watch player.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to catch the ball in New England, and I don't know who that's going to be. And I like Drake May. I think it could be Douglas. So he's just
especially in a PPR format. We saw, Pop Douglas, 49 catches last year, 561 yards in an offense that was going back and forth between Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. And could he be that guy? Any names for you, Aaron?
Yeah, there is a tough one, and it's Josh Downs. And I like Josh Downs, but the change of quarterback is intriguing to me. It's the difficult one. So I don't know if he's going to see the same success going from Minshew to Richardson. So that is one that's like I do like Downs, but I don't know how you guys feel, because that is one where it's like, yeah, he looked, he had good fantasy production.
68 catches, 770 yards, 2 touchdowns last year. Downs was a solid guy that you could flex. I played him as a wide receiver 3 at times on my team. And you're right. I love Gardner Minshew, like as a guy that can keep players happy fantasy-wise. So that's why I think it's super
he makes
intriguing.
fantasy players. Yeah.
Like for the Raiders, if Minshew wins that job, then all of a sudden I'm all over Devontae Adams. I think Brock Bowers is going to be good. I'm interested in Jacoby Myers at that point in time, getting peppered with some targets. And an offense, I think the challenge for Downs, who he's going in the 12th round. So he's the guy that you can wait on a little bit and get him 12th, 13th round. Is Anthony Richardson going to be boom or bust? Because Richardson is a guy that fantasy players have fallen in love with because of his legs. And is it just going to be, Michael Pittman all day? They did draft, Donnie Mitchell to come in, another vertical threat. And I think that's the challenge is we're so early in Anthony Richardson. Is he just kind of that big shot guy right now where it's going to be hard to sustain an underneath target in Josh Downs?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good question to ask for the Colts.
It's definitely a tough thing to look into.
Well, and we love Anthony Richardson, like you said, for his legs.
Mm-hmm.
But last season he wasn't accurate, and he wasn't accurate in college.
No.
So does that change? He's the prototypical Josh Allen, right? Like,
yeah, that's his ceiling.
You're
like
right.
if he can be Josh Allen, because Josh Allen was the big time gunslinger out of Wyoming that wasn't completing 60% of his passes, and we don't see that happen all too often. Where you get in the NFL and you get the opportunity to become what Josh Allen has become. So like Anthony Richardson has that base. But right now, I think it's going to be hard to invest in anyone outside of Michael Pittman in that pass game.
I do like the Josh Downs play, though, just purely because, like, he's still an NFL quarterback. He should be able to hit a 10-yard slant. Like,
that's you imagine it.
12, yeah, if you get 12th, 13th round, like, you're looking at a guy that it's kind of, I don't know if he can hit it like he did last year, like a floor play.
Right.
He kind of had that last year when he was healthy, but this is potential upside in an offense that could become more explosive. To your point, Steve, is the development.
Right.
He had a shoulder injury, so he wasn't able to throw a lot. But does that kind of change the way he throws the football, what he's looking to do in the passing game? So I do think that's an interesting offense.
There's one more player I kind of forgot about, but I think we should throw out there is Michael Wilson for Arizona. Marvin Harrison Jr. on the other side, who we all believe is going to be amazing. Michael Wilson should be wide receiver 2 on the team, and he's the big play guy. I mean, last year I think he had I have a stat right here: 38 catches, 565 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's literally the dude running down the field. Like, 38 catches but 565 yards is like, hey, and that guy could benefit from a Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to get a ton of respect no matter what.
Yeah.
So he should be getting looks, and he's going in the 17th round. So
I do love that.
Yeah, like I think I sometimes forget, just you get stuck on that rookie who's coming in, Marvin Harrison Jr. Michael Wilson looked good last season, especially once Kyler got there. Kyler was extend the play, and that dude caught so many passes, just like, oh, I'm open, because nobody paid attention to me after 10 seconds of you running.
I am so glad I teed it up and you guys knocked it out of the park, because those are two names that I do like. I think Wilson can hold off Zay Jones as the wide receiver too. Jones comes in and he's veteran presence for that offense, because I'm big on Trey McBride at tight end. So I think if we're doing the pecking order, I think it could be Marvin Harrison Jr. and McBride. But I think Wilson is a guy late in drafts I would invest in for that big play potential, because one thing you have to do too is take a chance and also look bye weeks, play it out. And Wilson as a wide receiver 2 in an offense with Kyler Murray could make enough plays to be valuable for your football team. So I think that's a really good point you make there, Steve, is having him, because he's going to go at last couple of rounds of your draft.
He reminds me of Will Fuller, right? You might get 0 from him, but you could get 30 or 40. Like that's kind of what you're drafting.
And you get a chance to see, because with Wilson, he's a guy that you'll have the luxury of letting it play out a bit. You know, because he's going to be on your bench for the first couple weeks. And so we can kind of get a sense of how the Cardinals' offense is going to function. And that's another good point. We're kind of talking about the strategies with the running backs. You can kind of do that same thing with some of these wide receivers like Downs, Wilson. You can take a chance because where you're getting them, you don't have to put them in your lineup. You can play a wait and see game and still benefit down the line with these guys.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like that a lot. So that second year players, what do y'all think? Who are your breakout players for this season? We were looking just really at the second year guys coming off of our big dynasty breakdown. That was our last episode. Check it out. So like and subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, on the Instagram. Like and subscribe on the YouTube. Give us a follow on the gram. You can check everything out, of course, at 3 Dudes Fantasy Football. You see it right there. We're dropping reels. We're dropping a ton of content over there. And, of course, you miss any recordings, shorts, reels at 3 Dudes Fantasy Football on the YouTube channel. And you know what this means, gentlemen? We're just one day closer to our fantasy football draft. One day closer. It's always an awesome time hanging out with you. Can't wait to talk some more football. So until next time, peace out.
Peace. Later.